Okay, so in this tutorial, we are going to be covering how you can create a site-to-site VPN link with the new Sophos firewall. Site-to-site VPN links are very important as they allow you to create an encrypted tunnel between your branch offices and HQ. And in the Sophos firewall, we can have IPsec and SSL site-to-site links that take place between a Sophos firewall and another Sophos firewall, also between a Sophos firewall and our existing Sophos UTMs, but also between the Sophos firewall and third-party devices as well. So very useful for getting your remote sites linked back up to HQ using traditional standards such as IPsec and SSL. Now, I have a Sophos firewall in front of me here, so I'm going to log on just using some local credentials. And as a result of this, we will see the familiar dashboard of the Sophos firewall operating system. Now, in this particular example, I'm going to be creating an IPsec tunnel between my Sophos firewall and a Sophos UTM that I have in a remote office. So there's a number of things that we need to think about when we're creating these policies and creating these links. First and foremost, we need to think about the device that we're connecting to and what policy they are using. Because one of the fundamentals of creating an IPsec policy security association is making sure that the policy is exactly the same both sides. Now that's absolutely fine if you're using a Sophos firewall at the other end of the tunnel, because we can use the same settings and it's very easy to set up. But if it's a separate device, it can be a little bit tricky. So the first thing I'm going to do is have a look at my IPsec policies. So I'm just going to go down to the objects link here in the Sophos firewall and go to policies. And in the list, you will see we have IPsec. In the list here, we've got a number of different policies, and they're designed to allow you to get up and running as soon as you possibly can. So you can see we've got a branch office one and a head office one here. Now, the most important thing here is just making sure that it does match up with what you've got at the other end at your branch office. So I'm going to have a look at the default branch office. And in here, we can see all of the different settings that are used in the IPsec Internet Key Exchange, and of course, building that security association. So looking at this, we can see the encryption methods, the authentication method being used. We can see the Diffie-Hellman group, key lifes, etc. So we need to make a mental note of what settings these are: AES 128, MD5, and those key lengths. Now, because I'm connecting to a Sophos UTM in a remote office, I can very quickly just go to my UTM and do the same process there. Have a look at the policy that's being used for IPsec. So I'm going to go to my IPsec policies, and again we can see a long list of different policies available. Now, picking on the first one in the list, I'm going to have a look at AES 128, and when we have a look at these details, AES 128, MD5, IKE, Security Association Lifetime, when I match those against what I've got at the Sophos firewall end, they're exactly the same. So we know that we've got a policy each end that matches. So that bit's absolutely fine. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is actually create my policy. So what I'm going to do here, go to System, VPN, IPsec. Now at the moment I've got no connections whatsoever. But what I'm going to do is create a new connection here. And we're going to keep this simple first and foremost. So I'm going to say I want to make an IPsec connection to my branch office. There we go. Now, in terms of the connection type, we're not talking about remote access VPNs here. We want to create a secure connection between sites. So I'm going to go site to site. Now, I also need to make the decision as to whether this Sophos firewall is going to initiate the VPN connection or only respond to it. Now, there might be certain reasons why you would choose one or the other, but in this scenario, we're going to just say we're going to initiate the connection. Now, the next thing I need to do is say, okay, what authentication are we going to use? How are we going to identify ourselves to the other end, the location that we are connecting to? So I'm going to use a PreShared key in this particular example. And I'm just going to put a PreShared key that only I know. Now, it's worth mentioning that there are limitations to PreShared keys, because if you've got lots and lots of different IPsec tunnels that you want to bring up and running, there's lots of different keys to think about. But we'll go on to other methods later on in this demonstration, how you can make that a little bit easier. Okay, so we're using a PreShared key. So the next thing I need to say is, where is that device? So firstly, I need to select the port that I am going to use on this Sophos firewall. which is going to be port 3, which has a 10.10.10.253 address. And I am going to connect to my remote device, which actually has an IP address of 10.10.254. Now, of course, in a real-world example, that's far more likely to be an external IP address. But for this particular tutorial, we'll just keep it as that IP. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is specify the local subnet. And what this is saying is what local subnets will the other end of the tunnel or the other location be able to access on this site. So I'm going to click Add. Now, I could add in a particular network, a particular IP if I wanted to, but I've actually got a few that I've created already. So I'm going to say, okay, any remote device, any remote UTM or Sophos firewall or any other device that's connecting via this site-to-site link will be able to access the HQ network, which is a network locally connected to this device. So we're going to click Save to that. Now, at the same time, I need to say what remote networks I'll be able to access when we successfully establish a link to the remote site. So again, I'm just going to click Add New Item there, and I've already got an object for the branch office network. That's the network that's locally connected at my remote site that I'm connecting to. So we're going to click Apply. Now, the configuration does require us to put a ID in for the VPN connection. This isn't really applicable to pre-shared keys, but I'm going to just put the IP address of the local device just to make things simple. We'll do exactly the same for the remote network. Okay, so we've created our configuration there. That includes the fact that we're using a certain type of authentication, a specific IPsec policy, we've specified the type, and also the networks that we're going to have access to. Okay, so there we go. So I now have my IPsec connection saved in the list there. But the problem is we need to configure the other side. Now, as I was saying, the other side of the connection, the other device that you're connecting to in your remote office, could be a Sophos firewall, could be a Sophos UTM, it could be a third-party device. As I was mentioning earlier, we have a Sophos UTM at our remote site, so I'm just going to quickly create my configuration there. Now, what we're doing on this side isn't really important because it will differ from device to device, but the main thing that we need to remember is that we're using the same policy and that we have the same network specified. Otherwise, our security associations are going to fail. Okay, so we've got that done. I'm going to click Save to that. Okay, so finally on the Sophos UTM, I'm just going to create my connection. Now, as I was saying earlier, this process will differ from device to device. If you're not using Sophos at all at your remote site, it might be a completely different configuration. But I'm just going to create my connection here that's going to be called HQ. I'm going to specify the remote gateway policy that I've just created. I'm also going to specify the interface that these IPsec VPNs are going to take place on. So I'll specify that in the list. Now, another thing that I need to do is specify the policy, and as I was mentioning earlier, this is really important. The policy that you set or that you specify here needs to be identical to what we are using on the other side. So you saw that we went through the process earlier at making sure that each policy has the same Diffie-Hellman group, the same algorithms, the same hashing methods. So you just need to make sure you select the correct policy there. We also need to specify the local networks that HQ are going to be able to access on this site once this tunnel is successfully established. Okay, so I'm just going to click Save to that, and that is now enabled. So we've had a look at both sides. We've firstly configured our Sophos firewall. We've then configured our Sophos UTM. So all that should remain here is I need to activate the IPsec tunnel on the left-hand side. So I'm activating this policy. I then need to initiate the connection and click OK. Now you can see we've got two green lights there, which means that that IPsec connection should be successfully established. And if I just jump onto the UTM for confirmation of that, we can see that our security association is successfully established there between our Sophos firewall and our Sophos UTM. So that shows how you can create a simple site-to-site VPN link between the Sophos firewall and the Sophos UTM. In subsequent tutorial videos, we'll have a look at how we can perform the same process but using different authentication mechanisms, such as X509 certificates. Many thanks for watching.